So I've been playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom lately, and I mean, it's a fun game. It's a real fun game. Hell of a world to mess around in. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. I can get you out of here. Where'd he go? What do you mean it's too dangerous? And I like that they brought back the concept of the Dark World, just implementing it differently. But it is literally just Breath of the Wild with a new coat of paint and a few different mechanics. Oh, that sounds strangely familiar. I wonder why. Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This game is something, that's for sure. It was the bane of my existence for me. I got stuck on night 6 because I couldn't beat it. I eventually beat it on a live stream on Twitch, and the VOD for that is no longer available, thanks Twitch. I did save the clip on my channel, but don't watch it. So a while back, I posed to you all, I hypothesized that the Five Nights at Freddy's games are not good horror games, and that its narrative isn't the greatest. For the first game, I felt it was more important for me to present myself as more human, for a lack of better words. Because despite all of my gripes with the series, I cannot deny that the first game made an impact. And I would be lying if I said it wasn't one of my reasons for getting into horror in the first place. Just like how I also can't deny that this one made an even bigger impact. So I opted to talk about my personal experience so that all of you could at least see where I was coming from, and talk about why I personally found the gameplay to be lacking. Because I can't talk about that objectively. That, by its nature, is subjective. However, I do feel confident that I can talk about that a bit more objectively with this game in particular. So, this is where the critique of the series begins. The last video was the groundwork, the foundation, if you will. You know my personal feelings towards the franchise. You are aware that I am not a fan of the gameplay for the reasons I discussed. This is not something that I hid from you. You have my word that no bias will get in the way of me objectively examining the gameplay and the story. And we will see if I find my thesis to be correct. You never know. I could actually end up proving myself wrong. So, shall we get started? I think up until Sister Location, I'm gonna follow the same kind of format that I had in the last video. Save the story for last, talk about the gameplay and the environment and stuff first. I don't think I'm gonna take quite as long on those things this time, but no promises. This is me. And just like the last video, I am mostly going to be talking about the things within the context of just this game. So any lore stuff that gets revealed to us after this game, I'm not going to be thinking about any of that. It's just going to overwhelm and confuse me. As far as the lore is concerned, from this point on, I will look at the game in question first, then look at the games we previously talked about. So here, I will talk about this game, and then we'll look at some stuff from FNAF 1 with our newfound context. Does that make sense? If you don't like that, that fucking sucks, cause that's how I'm gonna be doing it, because this shit is too fucking convoluted to try and look at all of it all at once while trying to make it make sense. Show of hands, how many of you were around when the trailer for this dropped? My hand's up. I remember it well. Really well. I was surprised, actually. I wasn't expecting to see a second one. So I saw the trailer and...
No doors?
Fuck off! I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that, like everyone else, I thought the idea of having no doors and open vents and more animatronics to deal with was just heightened stress before the game was even released. So, fuck it. Let's see how this plays out. Looking back at this and understanding what the setting of this game is supposed to be, this is probably the best way to open this trailer. We have a dirty, run-down hallway. It looks very reminiscent of what little of the hallway we could see of FNAF 1. Until you look a little bit closer, then you can clearly see it's the hallway for this place. So it doesn't fuck with continuity too much. It just makes you think for a little bit. And a fucked up Bonnie, god damn. And side note, I know I'm not the only one, but I do like the model designs for the withered characters. And a lot of people like Bonnie for an obvious reason. This is a wonderful image. His fucking face is gone and we can see the actual head part of the endoskeleton. That is good. That is a good example of a horror element that I talked about a few times, distorting the characters. We know what Bonnie is supposed to look like, and then, oh no, rabbit friend, what happened? Ignoring the fact that the rabbit friend was trying to kill us in the last game. Wait a minute, what's this? Oh no, chicken friend, what happened? Natural mystery. We remember what the characters looked like in the first game, and then we come to this one and they're fucked up and we're introduced to the toy variants. It forces us to ask what happened, which is really good. Good job, Scott. Anyway, great choice to open this way. Immediately gives you the wow factor with the obvious question, what the fuck happened to Bonnie? Yeah, not bad.
Hello? Hello? Well, if you're hearing this, then chances are you've made a very poor career choice.
Look, I'm doing my best here, man. Jokes aside, I love that line, and I'm a little sad that it didn't get used in the game itself, but I understand why. Then the rest of the trailer, and yeah, no doors. Obvious choice from a gameplay perspective and a horror perspective. It's not a terrible move. The second that people see that and understand that, suddenly they do not feel safe at all, and the game isn't even out yet. Yeah, not bad. Alright, gameplay. I don't need to go over it too much. You're doing the exact same thing that you did in the first game. You're looking left and right, you're checking cameras, you're trying to survive to 6 a.m. The difference this time is that there's no doors to close, the building won't run out of power, and you have a spare Freddy head to trick the animatronics, and it just so happens to work on almost all of them, except for Foxy. The mask. We'll be talking about this thing in this story segment. Oh, and probably the most important part, instead of 4 animatronics to deal with, you now have a whopping total of 11 threats, and you will be dealing with all of them at the same time by night 6. In our lineup, we have the guys we're familiar with, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Freddy, and then we have the toy lineup, Toy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy. Then the Mangle, the Puppet, and Balloon Boy, and then Golden Freddy at the end. Awesome. So instead of doors, you have the all-powerful mask. The way it works is if the animatronics appear in the vents or in your office, you throw the mask on and they go away. Unless you're dealing with Foxy, in which case you blind the fuck out of him with the flashlight. I mean, understandable. I also don't like it when someone puts light in my eyes, but that usually makes me go towards them and slap the flashlight out of their hand. I guess we're built different. And as the nights go up, it gets harder and harder, and holy fuck, I mean, it gets hard. But there's one more thing. You got one more person to deal with, and that would be the puppet. You see, you have to keep this music box wound up, otherwise the puppet wakes up and instantly kills you. This mechanic acts a lot like Foxy in FNAF 1. You have to go in the camera to wind up the music box either a little bit or all the way, and then you can flip it back down. But it's okay, you don't have to guess how much time you have. If it starts getting low, it'll tell you by flashing this yellow triangle. If it's dangerously low, like you need to get to it now, that triangle will turn red. And yeah, that's pretty much the game. Aside from Foxy or the puppet, your way to deal with all of them is just the mask. Survive until 6 a.m. There's 6 narrative nights and 1 custom night, and it gets harder and harder, like the last game. We'll get this out of the way first. There's no power drain for being in the cameras, but like the first game, aside from the music box, there's really no reason for you to be in the cameras. You do not need to be in the cameras at all. You can track just about all of the animatronics by sound cues and periodically checking the lights. You just need to pick up on which sounds to pay attention to and which sounds require you to do something. There's a sound cue for Foxy. There's a sound cue for when animatronics are in the vents. And the easiest one to notice is the Mangle. Oh right, Mangle. So he's the broken up pile of shit in the corner of this camera right here. The restaurant doesn't have any standards at all and just lets the kids rip this thing apart so much that they stop putting them back together. Pretty metal if you ask me. But anyway, yeah, he's so fucked up that he's tuned into a radio station 24/7 for some fucking reason. I guess one of those kids figured out how to do that. That kid's gonna be a genius. So when it's in a vent and it's ready to go in the office, you'll know by this fucking obnoxious sound. Oh, and before some people try to get mad at me for calling the fictional fucking robot he,
Hello. See, I told you wouldn't have any problems. Did, Foxy ever repair the hallway? Probably not. I was just curious. Like I said, he was always my favorite. They tried to remake Foxy, you know? They thought the first one was too scary, so they redesigned him to be more kid-friendly and put him in Kids Cove to keep the toddlers entertained, you know. But kids these days just can't keep their hands to themselves. The staff literally had to put Foxy back together at the end of every shift. Eventually, they just stopped trying and left him as some kind of take-apart, put-back-together attraction. Now he's just a mess of parts. I think the employees refer to him as just the Mangle.
I'm just repeating what the phone call said. Relax. So back to what I was saying, there's sound cues for basically everything to tell you where the people are, so again, there's no reason for you to be in the cameras aside from winding the music box. In fact, I'll say the game doesn't want me to be in the cameras for too long because I need to deal with everyone, so my gameplay from the first and second games look almost the exact same. I made the argument before that the first 4 games in the franchise are basically the exact same game with a different coat of paint. This really doesn't help the people arguing against that, and this time it's not because this is my playstyle. This is intended. This is what the gameplay is supposed to be. But let's talk about these cameras really quick first. The first few nights are the best for the horror mood because that's more likely when you're in the cameras the most, so the immersion has a chance to work. You get to see all the images and the uncanny valley gets to set in, and that's great, and like the last game, you can get away with it because you don't have to react to things as fast. But unlike the first game that utilizes darkness in the image and the bad quality, this game does something different. You select the camera and now, BAM! Now we have a light. And while it's okay, I have a con with it too. The pro is that it plays into this factor. It is an actually dark room, so you need a light, and when you can see, these things are in some lifeless angles and the halls are empty and the parts and service room, it's okay. The con is that now we have a light. Now we can see pretty clearly. And as I said, unlike the last game that utilizes the darkness and the fact that we couldn't see too well and how that was excellent for immersion, here we can see just fine. That aspect of the immersion is not as strong. And low-key, this is the biggest reason why I don't use the cameras in the game, because now I have to go in and push a button to see rather than just letting me see right away. Those are seconds that I could be spending keeping an eye on the hall or the vent or winding the music box. I'm not bothering with the cameras, I don't need to see where they are, it's a waste of my time. Now back to what I was saying about this being intentional. I think this game is the clearest example of the issue with the gameplay in at least the first 4 games. The issue being in relation to scaring the player being afraid, feeling fear, because, you know, horror game. The whole point of horror games is to be scared. Anyone who has ever watched anyone play this game on YouTube has probably noticed a sort of change after a certain amount of time. You may notice at the start of the game, they're in the cameras a lot more, looking around, looking for when they move, all good, that makes sense, they're immersed, they're drawn in, they're trying to look for the threats to see where they are, and then they get into the later nights, and you'll notice something. Almost every single one of them falls back to almost the exact same strategy. And you will notice that every time they fail, every time they die, rather than jumping and screaming in horror, they're jumping and screaming in frustration, yelling because they failed over and over and over again. This is how you are meant to play the game. Focused on warding off everyone in time, focused on winding the music box in time, not focused on the horror. This game stops being scary very quickly because of just how focused you end up having to be and how many times you have to keep trying. And if you want to legitimately try and tell me that FNAF 2 is not the same as FNAF 1 because it has some new mechanics in it, that's like saying that Tears of the Kingdom is not the exact same game as Breath of the Wild because there's new mechanics. A few new mechanics does not make it a completely different game. I just want to be clear. I don't have a problem with games with repeating gameplay. I would probably be very tired of Call of Duty and not have enjoyed games like Ratchet & Clank or Jak and Daxter if I did. My issue with these games in particular is the simple fact that these are meant to be horror games and the gameplay directly hinders that. If I'm playing a horror game for the first time and there's a point where I stop being scared, that would be a problem. Fucking doing this shit again, taking Amnesia for example. On a first time playthrough, the only times where you're not stressed are the times where they allow you to calm down. For a more relevant example, Finding Frankie. I might talk about this very soon. Finding Frankie does this fairly well. There's moments where you can calm down, relax, do some parkour shit, and then, oh fuck! And you can hear them right on your ass, and you gotta do some things very quickly. And it doesn't get old. Those chases feel pretty damn tense. Not bad. But Bowie, if you play any game more than once, it stops being scary. I'm aware of that, that's why I said a first time playthrough. Listen to the words that Bowie uses. He uses them for a reason. After playing through Five Nights at Treasure Island and Oblivious Casa, I do think it's possible to have this style of gameplay while also not sacrificing the horror vibe and the atmosphere. But FNAF 2 simply does not have that due to just how you have to play. It's a bit of a strange dilemma for me. Because on one hand, I'm okay with Night 6 being hard. Like I said in this video, it's a final night. It's supposed to be hard. It's the final test. It's everything that you've learned now put to the test with everything amped up. But on the other hand, as I said, that causes a problem because you're so focused on the mechanics of the game, there's no room for the horror when you get jumped. One, you're desensitized to it, so it doesn't do anything anymore. And you're also at a point where you can kinda know that it's about to happen, so it can't surprise you. And two, when it happens, the majority of the people are gonna say, "God damn it," rather than, "Ah." But I think that's all that I can say before I start getting fully subjective about it. It's obviously harder because we have 11 things to deal with, plus the puppet. But hey, at least it's not 50. That comes later, you silly goose. But you know what I can be objective about? The mechanics. So we have our cameras and the music box for the puppet, we know that. We got the lights on the vents, but we also have the flashlight, which happens to have batteries, and we have our Freddy mask. So, what should we do first? Alright, our main mechanic, the mask. Basically, all of the animatronics are fought off by putting the mask on. Doesn't matter if they're coming from the hallway or the vents. If they come in the office, put the mask on. If you see them in the vent entrances in the office, put the mask on. If the child gets out of line, put the mask on. The all-powerful mask is the answer. Except for Foxy. Foxy decided he needed to be fucking special and doesn't want his eyeballs anymore, so blind the fuck out of him! But keep an eye on your battery meter, cause if you run out of flashlight, Foxy can't get his light fixed. And he's not gonna be happy about that. That's also why you really need to pay attention to Balloon Boy, because this fucker is obsessed with your goddamn flashlight batteries, and every single person on the planet has wanted to bounce this little shit off the fucking floor. Just listen to the vent sounds, listen to Balloon Boy's laugh, listen to Foxy's sound cue, and listen for Mangle. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, Golden Freddy. So everyone who saw Golden Freddy for the first time in this game freaked out because they saw the rare Golden Freddy, and then they realized that no, he's actually another entity that you need to fend off. So that kind of ruins the mysterious allure that we built up with Freddy's 1, cause he's not rare anymore. Anyway, shove your face in a mask, motherfucker. So I want to make my point on the gameplay very clear. As I said a few times before, the atmosphere and sound and immersion are all super important for the horror mood. But once you break that immersion, it is extremely difficult to get the player to come back in so the horror can resume. And as a few people have agreed with me on, these games reach a point where the gameplay takes over. You prioritize beating the night over being immersed in the game world. You are not a security guard surviving by the skin of your teeth. You are the player fighting against the clock. I'll put it like this. I've played Amnesia to the point that I know the maps and puzzles like the back of my hand. I know how the systems work. I know how the enemies work. I know the maps like they're my own house. You could say that I know the game about as well as I know FNAF 1. And I know FNAF 1. There were still moments that get my heart pumping, so much so that every time I come to those particular moments, I dread getting up to them, and I am relieved when I am done with them. This is because Amnesia does not sacrifice the immersion at any point when you are playing. They go to great lengths to make sure you feel the way they want you to feel. And that atmosphere and environment is never broken. I know exactly where the enemies are, and they remain terrifying. Same with Soma. There is one section in particular that I always think of, and on paper it's a very simple area. There is a creature in a room. This creature is blind. All you have to do is not make any noise and you'll be fine. But the tension in that room is so thick you can cut it with a knife, and that's building before you actually get into the room. And then you find out that it can roam. It's brutal. These are moments that stick with me because at no point is the horror compromised for the sake of surviving and getting through. That is not the case with these games. Well, that was fun. Let's take a look at this environment here. I don't think I need to tell anyone that fucking obviously this isn't realistic. You would not have a fucking security office at the end of a publicly accessible area, a restaurant hallway, and not have a fucking door on it. Just freebirding to the public so any fucking weirdo can wander into the security office. Sure. Also, no vent covers on any of the vents. We all know that, so we don't need to mention it. We would never state the obvious like that. Never. That's just not something that I do. So with that out of the way, I think I can say this probably looks more like a Chuck E. Cheese than the FNAF 1 building. So this has more of the vibe of the fun pizza arcade place with animatronic entertainment, party rooms and stuff. It's closer to the place that you would see in real life, so it's easier to believe. I really don't have a whole lot to say. I already talked about how I think what they did with the cameras detracts from the atmosphere, and aside from Chica at this particular camera, I don't think the toy animatronics look particularly scary or intimidating. And I guess in a way that can make for an uncomfortable vibe because they don't look threatening, but they're still coming after you. I mean, this is pretty freaky, like geez, calm down on the eyeballs there, Bonnie. God damn. But from what I can see, the environment shines more when the withered animatronics enter the picture. I think these angles tend to work a bit more with them in the picture. Maybe that's just an opinion though. You guys like the toys or the withered animatronics more? Talk about it. It's still dark-ish, but I think I prefer not having the light at all. And finally, as I said at the start, ignoring the fact that this isn't realistic, oh my god, the sheer amount of stress by sitting here and not feeling safe in this fucking office. There are no doors, there's no way to close yourself off from the terrors outside of this room. When you're immersed, this is terrifying and stressful. You do not feel safe in this fucking room. That is good. However, at the same time, this room is also rather wide and open and bright compared to the first office where it was more closed in and cramped, getting that claustrophobia feeling and only being lit by a single weak bulb. I think this environment wins. Alright, it's our favorite part, story time. I'm not even gonna fucking bother with trying to narrow down exactly when this shit happened in relation to the first game, but I at least know that the events of this location took place before the events of the first location because our paycheck is dated 1987, and the phone man in the first game references 87. Unless someone wants to try and argue that he meant 1887. Didn't think so. So the first game is in the future. Good to know. So in this story, we are Jeremy Fitzgerald. From what I am fucking told from the game, because I am looking at this game. Remember, listen to the words that Bowie uses. Thank you. We are Fitzgerald, and we are starting our... what?
Hello and welcome to your new summer job.
Thanks. So our last night is in November. Sorry, that's getting ahead of myself, but fuck me, that is a long fucking summer, man. So anyway, sorry, just like the first game, the story is mostly contained in the phone calls. So what we're gonna do this video is go through the individual calls and break them down, and we'll pick up the whole story as we go. The story for this individual game. And then I will tell you the overarching story as I understand it so far. Some of you might even be surprised, who knows?
Hello and welcome to your new summer job at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I'm here to talk you through some of the things you can expect to see during your first week here and to help you get started down this new and exciting career path. Now, I want you to forget anything you may have heard about the old location, you know. Some people still have a somewhat negative impression of the company. That old restaurant was kind of left to rot for quite a while, but I want to reassure you, Fazbear Entertainment is committed to family fun and above all, safety. They've spent a small fortune on these new animatronics. Facial recognition, advanced mobility, they even let them walk around during the day. Isn't that neat? But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away. Heck, we should be paying them to guard you. Now, that being said, no new system is without its kinks. You're only the second guard to work at that location. The first guy finished his week but complained about conditions. We switched him over to the day shift. So, hey, lucky you, right? Mainly he expressed concern that certain characters seem to move around at night and even attempted to get into his office. Now, from what we know, that should be impossible. That restaurant should be the safest place on Earth. So while our engineers don't really have an explanation for this, the working theory is that the robots were never given a proper night mode. So when it gets quiet, they think they're in the wrong room. So then they go try to find where the people are, and in this case, that's your office. So our temporary solution is this. There's a music box over by the prize counter, and it's rigged to be wound up remotely. So just every once in a while, switch over to the prize counter video feed and wind it up for a few seconds. It doesn't seem to affect all of the animatronics, but it does affect one of them. And as for the rest of them, we have an even easier solution. You see, there may be a minor glitch in the system, something about robots seeing you as an endoskeleton without a costume on and wanting to stuff you into a suit. So hey, we've given you an empty Freddy Fazbear head. Problem solved. You can put it on any time and leave it on for as long as you want. Eventually anything that wandered in will wander back out. Something else worth mentioning is kind of the quirky modern design of the building. You may have noticed there are no doors for you to close. But hey, you have a light, and even though your flashlight can run out of power, the building cannot. So don't worry about the place going dark. Well, I think that's it. You should be golden. Check the lights, put on the Freddy head if you need to. Keep the music box wound up. Piece of cake. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
So right away, we can see some pretty good examples of writing that's meant to make the player think that he's talking about the location from FNAF 1, and I think it's executed pretty well. The negative impression of the company, you can think of the newspaper clippings, old restaurant was left to rot, the cobwebs and wires hanging down everywhere, and with how it set up the environment, immediately calling attention to the new animatronics, and then you see the more familiar models fucking chucked in the back room. It's not bad. Good job, Scott. What I find mildly interesting is the guy's wording here in this next paragraph. That being said, no new systems without its kinks. You're only the second guard to work at that location. He's kinda talking like he's at a dispatch center, you know? If he worked at this building, then he would say like, you're the second guy to work this shift or something. I don't know, it just stuck out to me. I think this game handles the guards a little bit better. The first guy worked this post before, but he had issues, I wonder why, and they moved him to the day shift where this wouldn't be a problem. That is a logical solution. Thank you. Logic. What isn't too logical to me is the next line. Mainly he expressed concern that certain characters seem to move around at night and even attempted to get into his office. Now from what we know, that should be impossible. The office doesn't have a fucking door. What the fuck do you mean that should be impossible? You even said they could walk around. What if they malfunction, turn on at night and walk around? Are they supposed to be like mimes and there's an invisible fucking wall just right at the threshold? Damn, the security guard's energy is too strong. I can't get through the barrier he put up with his mind unless I have the power of friendship. Sorry, it just gets me every time. Should be the safest place on Earth. Okay. They say the working theory is they don't have a proper night mode, so they at least give an explanation for them walking around that, at least in my humble opinion, makes a bit more sense than their servos locking up. So we're still doing a little bit better than the last game. He explains the music box mechanic and talks about how we don't have doors and we have a flashlight and the building won't run out of power. Cool. Now we'll talk about an issue that I got. Let me play the first bit of Night 2's call for a second.
Hello? See, I told you your first night wouldn't be a problem. You're a natural. By now, I'm sure you've noticed the older models sitting in the back room. Those are from the previous location, and we just use them for parts now. The idea at first was to repair them. They even started retrofitting them with some of the newer technology, but they were just so ugly, you know, and the smell. So the company decided to just go in a whole new direction and make them super kid-friendly. Those older ones shouldn't be able to walk around, but if they do, the whole Freddy head trick should work on them too, so whatever.
Okay, so when animatronics come up and try and spook us, we just put the mask on and they go away because it tricks them, right? And this is in the past, and these older animatronics are supposedly the ones that we see in FNAF 1. So when they came up in FNAF 1, why didn't we just pop the mask on there too? Cause, you know, it works so well. And assuming this guy is the same phone guy from the last game, why did he not think of that when he got jumped by the animatronics in his phone call? He's the one that told us about the fucking mask in this game, and this is supposed to be in the past, so he knew that the mask tricked the older animatronics, which those supposedly are. Why did he not think to grab a spare head at any point during his shift, just in case the same issue came up and they started walking around and trying to get into his office? Because if this grabbing people and stuffing them into suits is a common occurrence, and this game was in the past, and they're still doing it in this game, which is in the future, that means this guy already fucking knew about this shit. So what the fuck? This is why you need to make sure you think of mechanics within the narrative space as well, because contradictions like this can occur. But that's really my only gripe about the mask, is that it creates a contradiction in the narrative. We have this thing that we know can trick almost all of the animatronics. Great, let's give these to all of the guards from now on, since we know there's been an issue in the past, And we at least cared enough to spend a small fortune on all new shiny animatronics with facial recognition bullshit at some point, and we know this mask can almost solve the entire issue. Fucking whatever, I'm over it. I think it's fine as a mechanic. Anyway, it's a decent introduction. These new animatronics have facial recognition and criminal database bullshit, so they're super safe, but they don't have a proper night mode, so they're trying to find people. Then seeing you and thinking you need a new suit, we talked about my issue with that in the first video. It's fine. Night 2 kind of sheds a little more light on why we have these newer animatronics.
By now I'm sure you've noticed the older models sitting in the back room. Those are from the previous location, and we just use them for parts now. The idea at first was to repair them. They even started retrofitting them with some of the newer technology, but they were just so ugly, you know? And the smell. So the company decided to just go in a whole new direction and make them super kid-friendly.
Because they're fucking ugly.
Are we clear, Blank? You're fucking ugly.
So the older models had to endure Mark's roasting session in the back room. Meanwhile, the company went with the sleeker, kid-friendly version. Seems pretty simple to me. But the older models also had a smell. We'll talk about that later. So night 3, he basically says, hey, any rumors you heard got nothing to do with us. Our day guard didn't see anything. Night 4, ooh, there's an investigation and the building might get shut down? Well, that's spicy. I wonder what happened. He also says,
but try to avoid eye contact with any of the animatronics side if you can. Someone may have tampered with their facial recognition systems. We're not sure. But the characters have been acting very unusual, almost aggressive toward the staff. They interact with the kids just fine, but when they encounter an adult, they just stare.
So this game's horror relies heavily on the imagination, but I also think that kind of works pretty well. Because the way Scott described it, you can get the mental imagery of what that would look like. And I don't know about you, but an animatronic acting normal around a kid and then seeing me and fucking staring at me, whew, not bad, Scott, not bad. So anyway, obviously things aren't quite so hunky-dory over in Fazbear Land. Maybe Night 5 will clue us in a little bit more.
Oh, hey, good job, Night 5. Keep a close eye on things tonight, okay? From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, you know, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available. We don't have a replacement for your shift yet, but we're working on it. We're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that. It was closed for years, though. I doubt we'll be able to track anybody down. So just get through one more night. Hang in there. Good night.
Yeah, just getting moved to the day shift. No previous employees, huh? Interesting. Alright. Last night better send us home, Scott.
Hello. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right. Listen, just finish your shift. It's safer than trying to leave in the middle of the night. We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform. Stay close to the animatronics and make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay? For now, just make it through the night. When the place eventually opens again, I'll probably take the night shift myself. Okay, good night and good luck.
Alright, now we have all the pieces. Let me tell you a tale. In the year 1987, Fazbear Entertainment opened the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza after the old location was shut down and abandoned. Originally intending to repurpose the older mascots and give them some tech upgrades, but they simply weren't appealing enough to kids, being damaged and ugly and having a bad smell. So Fazbear Entertainment bit the bullet and spent some coin on the shiny new animatronics, complete with all the new gimmicks. Facial recognition, criminal database referencing, advanced mobility, and one of them can even play the radio. They've got it all. Everything's going great for a while, but then some motherfucker just has to come along and ruin everything. 2 kids get reported missing and an investigation is underway. Of course, Fazbear Entertainment denies any wrongdoing, as any good corporation does. However, security notices a change in the animatronics. Something's wrong with their facial recognition system. They can't identify the adults, they just stare, trying to identify them. A little bit later, the building is on lockdown, and then they found it. The suit. A man used a spare suit to lure 2 kids into the back room. Their bodies were never found, and since then, none of the animatronics have been acting correctly. The man responsible was identified via video surveillance and arrested. It was later reported that a total of 5 were missing, but their bodies were never found. He hid them in the suits of the animatronics. And we know how the rest of that story goes. So if I didn't make it obvious, I think Five Nights at Freddy's 2 takes place during the disappearances and also murders that were told to us in the newspaper clippings in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. It's the only thing that makes sense to me in the overarching narrative so far. So let me take you through my thought process, because some of you might be yelling at me, which is fine. The clippings showed up as random secrets, so that implies to me that they're referencing something not in the present. It could be referencing the past or the future. And since there's no date on them, it could very likely be the location in 1987. Really, the thing that kind of clued me into this are the events told to us. The newspaper says police suspect the man used a mascot to lure kids over. The phone guy says someone used a spare suit. 2 extremely similar events. Then there's a minor detail. This is where we'll talk about that smell mentioned in Night 2. I believe one of the working theories floating around was that they smelled because Afton killed people before this and dumped them in those suits. Then that place closed down and now we're here and they smell. And I don't think that's the case because it doesn't really line up with what we're told in the games. We are told that they started to put some fancy shit in the older animatronics but gave up. So I would think that would logically mean they were messing around with them. If they were messing around with them and there were bodies in there, I feel like they would have found them. So I think they just had a smell. Kind of like how there's a smell when you walk into an old person's house or some abandoned place or anything. They just have a smell. And they don't like it, so they didn't use them. And then there would be another issue with that. If we say that there were already bodies in there, and this game is not the events listed in the newspaper, that would mean that there are now more bodies also being hidden in the suits. And I don't think that makes much sense, because how much fucking space do these animatronics have in there? I don't think it's that much. A child's body is small, but it ain't that small. And then I thought about the problems with this idea. The obvious one is going to be the dates. In the newspaper clipping, it says June 26th. But my argument against this is that the dates in this damn series are almost never reliable. The bite of 87, the bite of 83, the bite of 93. How about the bite of go fuck yourself? I don't care anymore. And the dates aren't even reliable in this game. As I said in my little joke at the start of this, we start the game getting introduced to this as a summer job. And then the next date that we see is fucking November. There's some time fuckery going on here. But then I thought about that some more. This was introduced as a summer job, so May, June, July range. It could be possible that the 2 kids were lured on June 26th by the previous night guard. Night guard complains, get moves to day shift. Gets out of Dodge. We come in. The missing persons report comes in. They look at the cameras. They see the guard. He gets immediately fired, so the company has no involvement. Day shift comes open. Phone dispatch guy says, hey, don't let any previous employees in. And I mean, from my mind, it's possible. And then there's the other thing to think about, which is also another issue with this. Third newspaper is the health department one, talking about the smell and the blood and all that. At no point did the newspaper specify which animatronics the kids were put in. They could have been put in the toy suits. This is an issue for several reasons. Firstly, there were 5 kids. There are only 5 kids. There's 3 toys and then Balloon Boy. The mangle is the pile of shit in the corner, not hiding shit in there. Balloon Boy, too small. And then how the fuck would that even happen? So only 3 suits. Yeah, no, not possible. Gotta be these fuckers. Also supported by the minigames that we see in this game. And I guess this is where I talk about this shit. There are hidden minigames in this game. All of these minigames have the same theme. They all involve the death of 5 kids in some way, with the original cast in the first game, and it kind of shows you how it happened. It elaborates the event a little bit more. Take Cake to the Kids, showing one kid who is assumed to be Henry's daughter and therefore the puppet. We will talk about that much later. By later, I mean a completely different fucking video. I'm not talking about that shit right now. And the child gets hit with the drive-by strat. Go Foxy Go, showing Foxy discovering the bodies. Save Them, showing you as the purple guy disguised in one of the yellow suits, following the puppet throughout the pizzeria, seeing the dead bodies along the way. Some people say you're Freddy, but you're clearly not. Freddy is on the stage. And then there's the more upfront one. Give gifts, give life. You're the puppet bringing the kids back to life by some voodoo ghost magic, allowing them to haunt the suits. And as I said, this is the minigame that basically slaps down the toy theory because it's the 4 with Foxy and then Golden Freddy. Though I suppose if we're also counting Henry's daughter, that's technically 6, but that's a numbers game that I'm gonna fucking worry about later. Bowie, MatPat made a theory about there being 10 kids. Yeah, I had a feeling someone would mention that. I like MatPat. I think he's a smart guy. I like his theories, but I think there's a point where he just needed to step back a minute and say, hold on, am I thinking about this too much? Because I don't think 10 kids makes sense in the context of the first 4 games, the original story. There's the suit space thing that I mentioned earlier. Where the fuck are you gonna put that many bodies? But Bowie, the remnant. Shut the fuck up, we are not going there right now. But then there's the other stuff. Throughout these 4 games, and really the series up to Ultimate Custom Night, there have only ever been 5 victims of William Afton mentioned. Only 5. Not including the Afton kids and Henry's daughter. I'm talking about this fucking thing right here. The purple guy punting the children in the restaurant. There have only ever been 5. 5 ghosts, 5 gravestones, 5 pieces, 5 animatronics, 5 bodies in one place, 5 nights. 5. Not 10, 5. Also the wording that's consistently used here. Local pizzeria. That kind of wording suggests to me like a small town. In a small town, if one kid goes missing, there's panic. 2, schools are shutting down for multiple days because in small towns, everyone knows everyone. That kind of thing is extremely disturbing. If Afton's pulling up 10 kids, that man's stacking bodies. That town's about to be childless. And if that town's missing 10 kids, they're calling the fucking National Guard and nuking the fucking town, okay? 10 doesn't make sense to me. Because of how these games are handled, I obviously can't fully confirm that my take on it is correct. But what we can do is talk about it in the comments. Let me know what you think. And lastly, have no fear, because you see on night 7, we unlock the power of shapeshifting and become an entirely different person, Fritz Smith, and we get fired for tampering with the animatronics. So don't worry, Fitzgerald in fact does not get fired for continuing to be alive. Fucking Fritz Smith is the piece of shit that was fucking with the robots who got arrested. Fuck that guy. Case closed. I talked a lot. Did you guys have fun? I had fun. I want to address Fazbear Entertainment now. Again, I'm operating on only information that I've gained from the games that I've looked at while going through this series. So that means I'm only working with 1 and 2 right now. So it can definitely be argued that Fazbear Entertainment is an evil, shady company responsible for something and covering things up and this and that. Definitely. Supported by the shadiest fuck legal greeting, the general vibe that there's absolutely no concern for your safety at all. However, I also think it can be argued that this is a red herring. It can also be argued that the company, while being a little shifty, is innocent and nothing more than a greedy corporate entity. The sequence of events that we got from the clippings was 2 kids went missing, and the dumb fuck that was responsible snitched on himself by being on camera. Authorities believed he dressed as a mascot in order to do it. Next, 5 kids in total were missing. The guy was charged. The bodies were never found. The company has been having a hard time getting people to come back. Fucking understandable. But that does not imply that the company is responsible. All it means is that the individual hid the bodies, and now the company is having an issue getting people to come back after the less than stellar reputation after this. And then next you find out where the guy hid the bodies, and the wording is going to be super important here. The article says that the health department is threatening to shut them down for sanitation issues. Now, if any of you have watched any decent amount of Kitchen Nightmares, I think we all understand that if a health inspector or the health department gets a report that a restaurant is unsanitary, and unsanitary can mean anything, not dead bodies, then yeah, they're gonna try and shut that shit down as fast as possible because of the obvious concern, right? If a restaurant that is serving food to customers is unsanitary, then people are gonna get sick, and that's an issue. Then we get the hint about the kids. Police were contacted when parents noticed blood on the animatronics. Fucking obviously, right? But that does not mean the company knows the bad guy put the kids in the suit. All that means is that we found out where he hid the bodies. The company is being threatened by the health department because who the fuck else would the health department go after for the sanitation issues in a restaurant? And the last clipping says they're shutting down because they can't get anyone to partner with them. Their reputation was ruined. This fucking asshole killed a bunch of people in their restaurant and then hid the bodies in their mascots, and they only found out about it because the bodies started smelling and they started turning into people soup, making them look completely fucking incompetent. No one wants to partner with a company that has that kind of shit going on. Fucking obviously. Unless you're clinically insane. Anyway, now, this can absolutely change once we get to the other games, but as it stands right now, I don't think the company itself is actually all that evil. At least in the context of the first 2 games. And that's even supported with the context that they spent money on the toy animatronics with the facial recognition and the criminal database bullshit for security. If they didn't give a shit and they were evil, why would they do that? Overall, as I said, I think the first game had the better execution of the environment for the reasons that I stated in that video. And this game is just a bit too bright and open feeling compared to the first Office. There isn't that feeling of claustrophobia, which is also pretty big for horror. So comparatively, the atmosphere here is weaker. I think the story would probably be the bigger contributor to it being good horror, but the issue is that nobody knows what's correct. No one knows what the goddamn story is. So the way this sits right now is the first game is subjectively not very scary to me due to the nature of the gameplay loop. However, out of the 2, I think it is the more horror-ish game with its atmosphere and environment and sound, so it's okay. Not great, but it's okay. FNAF 2 could be considered decent for horror if any of us knew what the fucking story was. But since I can't say if I'm correct or if anyone else is correct, I don't think I can confidently say that it's good. But Bowie, how do you rate these out of 10? Alright, so I'm gonna be real with you. I fucking hate number systems because they can mean different things for different people, and it completely fucking annoys me. I swear to God, you'll get like one person that's like, yeah, fuck this game. This shit sucks. It was bugged the whole time. I saw my leg coming out of my skull. 7 out of 10. Like, what the fuck? What is a 1 to you then? On a less jokey note, I remember watching this one guy. I don't remember who it was. I don't remember what they were talking about. But they were reviewing a game, and they had some good critiques of it, but had a super positive experience with it. They gave it a 6 out of 10. And I said, okay, what the fuck does that mean? what is a 10 or a 9 to you then? So, I find numbers horrendously useless. I'll just talk about it and say whether or not I think it's good. So, in conclusion today, I would consider this game an okay horror game if any part of any of the story was ever confirmed. If I was just able to know what the actual story between these two games was supposed to be, because I want to think that I'm correct, but I can't know that for sure. And since that hasn't really happened, and I don't think it ever will happen, I hesitate to call it okay. If those minigames were less random chance, I would lean more towards my consideration, because that would mean more chances of seeing them and more chances of understanding the message. The segments where you're in Freddy's POV, I know I didn't talk about that much. Looking around the empty stage, they're okay. It's interesting to see. Aside from the puppet staring at you, it's not really horror-ish. I know that sounds harsh because, yeah, there's something inherently creepy about these suits looking at you. My issue with these segments is, typically if you're gonna have something like this in your horror game, you need to make sure the player understands why they're seeing it. They understand the meaning behind it. I don't know what we're supposed to get from these segments. We're in Freddy's point of view. Does that mean we're a person hiding inside Freddy, or am I Freddy? Why do Bonnie and Chica look at me? Why does Golden Freddy show up? Why does the puppet follow my gaze? To my knowledge, we haven't gotten an answer to any of these questions, so why are we supposed to be scared by this? If you don't understand why something is happening, then you're more likely to be confused rather than scared. I don't know what this scenario is supposed to be here. Does that make sense? The story, if it's correct, is okay. Some of the positions the animatronics take in the cameras are okay. Everything that I see that I like is all just okay. I think FNAF 2 is okay, but I don't think I can call it a good horror game. Alright, FNAF 3 is next. I'll get to that at some point. See ya. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like the quality of the owl stills that I've been using, they were drawn for me by this lovely individual on the screen, Goblin Simp. You can see more of their work on their Instagram, and if you want them to draw something for you as well, they currently have open commissions. Go hit them up, they're very approachable, easy to work with, got nothing but positive things to say about them. Links down below.